So we begin with day 5 of our rose, and today we'll be doing this petal with right now the lower side petal, which is relatively darker on my image, and I'll be painting this. I'm looking at the values and the shapes which I can see in this. So if you have the image, it's fine. If you have a glazed paper image on the glazed paper, it is better so that you can see the shapes and the values properly. Otherwise you open it on another digital device. Now these colors are very close by colors, which is pink and red and pink, and these are mixing evenly and very smoothly in a very organic manner in this petal. So we have to be very careful when we are putting in our colors and the values, how dark we should go or how light. That has to be maintained. Of course we'll be doing that in layers, but every layer will be getting us nearer to that version which we almost towards that version which we see on our reference image. This is not a hyper realistic painting that we are doing, but this is an artistic painting of a light pink rose, because we are trying to get the values correct so as to bring out the lightness of this rose in our main paint when we finish this painting. I think while talking I need to clean this area a bit. Just applying water right now because I want to clean the very pale pink which I can see here with my brush, which is flat brush, small flat brush. You can even lift it off with your tissue paper if you want. I'm not doing that because it is not very prominent. Now I'm coming down with a mix of red and pink in the area outside of the place where I have just cleaned up. It's a tricky area, so I need to concentrate better. There are many ways to paint this area. You can do it relatively loose style also, but right now I am in the initial first few layers. I will be focusing on the shapes that I can see on my reference image. There is little more white over here. When we last painted this area, I remember using purple, so it's giving me sort of darkish, relatively very slightly darkish area. So that's what I tried to get rid of and put in a few dots of pink. So cleaning this previous area once more. Cleaning means I'm trying to adjust the shapes which I see. Cleaning means I'm trying to adjust the shapes which I see. Cleaning means I'm trying to adjust the shapes which I see. Cleaning means I'm trying to adjust the shapes which I see. Cleaning means I'm trying to adjust the shapes which I see. Cleaning means I'm trying to adjust the shapes which I see. Cleaning means I'm trying to adjust the shapes which I see. Cleaning means I'm trying to adjust the shapes which I see. Cleaning means I'm trying to adjust the shapes which I see. Cleaning means I'm trying to adjust the shapes which I see. Cleaning means I'm trying to adjust the shapes which I see. Cleaning means I'm trying to adjust the shapes which I see. Cleaning means I'm trying to adjust the shapes which I see. Cleaning means I'm trying to adjust the shapes which I see. Cleaning means I'm trying to adjust the shapes which I see. Cleaning means I'm trying to adjust the shapes which I see. So as we go down in this flower, it is relatively darker, so we'll go dark after wetting this surface. I'm wetting more than one petal at a time this time, because these are smaller petals and they are huddled together, so there's not a great distinction between from one petal to the other. I'm using purple color after on and doing wet on wet. Looking at my reference image, I just changed my brush because this is a smaller area, that's why. It is size 0 brush I'm using now, and pink. My pink is actually permanent magenta from Magello Mission Gold. You must have seen, if you have seen the preparation video. Now the shadow with some purple, and I'm also using red and pink mix just below that purple shading. When we are working in the shadow areas, especially with regard to these smaller petals, we will need to work according to the shapes that we see, because we have to give a form to this rose. So how can we give a form? We can render any image a form only when we are working in the shadow shapes of it. Otherwise we will not be able to bring about a form. So only when you paint the shadow areas, the form of anything, a leaf, a flower, a house, whatever it is, will come about. This place is darker, so you can even go wet on dry, even though I have done wet on wet here. Because it's a small area, we can go both wet on wet and wet on dry as is comfortable to you. Here you can do wet on dry. This is even smaller place, and the corners I have put little bit of purple here. Now I'm just taking water and whatever purple I have on my brush, I'm just putting it over here. That is also a petal which we are doing right now. But where I'm painting right now, right before, on top of this, there's a small white, so I'll just get rid of some paint. So this is a very whitish area again where we are doing this area. So try to observe carefully. You can use a digital image also. Purple and red and pink mix over here. This is a shadow area, and then there is a protrusion in this part of the petal, and at the end where I'm wiping with my tissue is the protrusion, and this side is the shadow again. This is a curved area, so I'm trying to make the lines in the form of curves. And this area, there's two different colors being used here. This is red and pink halfway, and the other half also I'll be doing. The other half I'm using only pink. And I'll mix the two so that I don't get a distinction between the first and the second colors used. There's adequate water on my brush, even though it is a 0 size brush, so the colors have mixed on their own. So wetting down the shadow area, this protruded petal is one petal which is casting this shadow which I am watering down, and this shadow happens to be lying on the lighter colored petal. So when we are doing this shadow, I am using not very dark colors but very pale purple. All the colors which I'll be using will be used in layers and in a very pale form. I think I need to whiten a little bit over here, slightly in the middle. Just taking off a bit. Now putting in pink now. Because the area is already wet, and so whatever marks you put down, they will spread and they will not make a hard line. So that shadow we just created is lying down on this very light colored petal, which we have just watered down, and we will create its form by using certain pale purples, and we'll augment the previous layers through this color. I'm not getting streaks of color because I'm using fairly wet paint, and I did wet down that area, that petal. But I'm not taking a lot of paint. Even though that paint mix is thin, I'm not taking a lot of paint in the brush. wetting down the next petal. Now this will be a intricate petal, I think. And even though you may not always, I also may not always get the shadow shapes correct, but the generalistic form must be correct so that we can bring it out. Over here I see that the shadow shapes are very intricate, so let's talk about it when we reach that point. Right now I'm using pale purple, watered down. We are doing that area which I have put in the inset and squared it with a black rectangle. I can't square something with a rectangle. I'm just indicating the area where we are doing painting now. So this is the area which I was saying would be somewhat intricate. As long as you are good with the major shapes, the smaller shapes will take care of itself. Maybe you miss one or two. That is not a. It will not depart from the overall impact of this flower. So we need to be careful a bit. See, I'm taking very less color on a size 0 brush and doing a very small area right now. Pink color. Taken some water also this time on the brush. Going by the reference image, looking at it, taking some pink now, very faint. Trying to get the veins on this petal. So every now and then try to look at the entire piece that you are creating so that you can have a better idea as to where and how you should, where you need to place the colors, and how meaning how should you render the shape that you see. Right now, for every petal I'm trying to go by the way each and every petal is shaped. That is, I'm going by the form of the particular petal that I am painting. Using some pink here. I'm getting a strong line here, but I need to water it down, so I'm taking some water on my zero size brush and go over that line. Now watering down the lower part of the same petal from where it is starting. A slight bit of white required over there, which I have mistakenly painted, so I am using Mr. Clean. So in order to use Mr. Clean, I just wetted that area first with a brush. After few seconds I used Mr. Clean slightly. Mr. Clean Magic Eraser and its Indian versions would be available on Amazon, of which I am not aware the names of it. So we are doing the next petal now, wetting it down with clear water and bringing about the shapes, working in the veins when the area is already wet. We do not want very much of defined veins over here. My purple is finished on the palette, so I just grab some from that mix, which is my cerulean blue and mix of permanent magenta, which is the pink. Just water here, getting excess water off on the palette. Now taking some color. We had just wet down this area, and that's why the shapes I am creating are blurring out. Using pink. Very tiny dots and dashes is what I'm using here. The area has to be wet as well as the dots and dashes small and slightly separated in the direction of the form of that petal. Which we must have done when we did our drawing tracing. I think this looking too dark. Lighten, yeah, it will lighten as it. Let me put a layer of water over it again. So the vividness will vanish. Okay, then there are very tiny little shapes in here. See carefully so that you can create these tiny, almost indistinguishable shapes. You see, I'm creating those. It's wetting down that area. Red and pink mix. And some purple also. That I'm using towards the back side of this petal. Because it is pale and here we already have, so I'm slightly putting its very tiny amount of paint here on the brush, very tiny. You can see that the well has almost no water, so the only water which is there slight bit is on the brush, and I'm picking up with that little water, and I'm picking up very less paint, extremely less, just to create dots and dashes, leaving tiny spaces in between. I used some water, so I'm getting these thicker lines now. So if you have done this much, it's quite a lot that we have done. It's not an easy feat to complete a flower which we haven't been able to see that clearly. Have you? If you haven't, do one more thing. Turn your digital image into a grayscale image using your smartphone, and then you will be able to see the colors better as to how dark should you go or how light you should go. So in order to see that, copy this image and create another one and turn it into grayscale one. Now I just want to put a few of these dots and dashes with my purple on this very light petal, and I'm using next to no color over here. That is, we need to be that light, and still it will create the form. One or two